Good evening, everybody. It's John here from Tutor to You, welcoming you along to another of our live stream sessions, revision blast sessions. Tonight, we're thinking about ecosystems under stress, just as we were last time, just over a week ago. Hope you had a nice half term, everybody. I'm joined tonight by the real experts. We've got Brendan in the middle of the screen, and we've got Fiona on the right hand side. Good evening, both.
Good evening, everybody.
Brendan, do you want to tell us a little bit about what we're doing tonight?
Sure, yes. Thanks, John. And thanks, Fiona, as well, for what you're going to tell everybody this evening. We're doing this session this evening about A-level geography. We're looking at one of the topics which is really important, key ecosystems under stress, the second part of that. There'll be a range of retrieval activities with a few short explainers, and we hope that you'll find them helpful. So if any time you think, oh, that went past a bit too quickly, you can always go back and look at it again on YouTube, and you can also download the PowerPoint. That may be hopefully useful to students. It may also be useful to teachers too, if there's any teachers out there listening or trainee teachers. I know people have found them very helpful in the past. So everybody is welcome to use this as you wish. We can't possibly cover everything in this topic, but it will hopefully provide an opportunity for you to sort of think a bit, because it's quite well known that the more deeply we think about our learning, the more likely we are to remember it. So it will be helpful for you to have a pen and paper handy to jot things down as we go. And or you can also, add your thoughts and answers even in the chat. So to start off with, I'm going to kick off with a true or false activity. But before we look at the questions, we'd like you to look at this map. It's a world map you're probably familiar with this kind of map. It's a world map showing the world's major biomes. So take a look at that just for a moment or two. We've magnified it for you there. John, if you just unmagnify it, the reason is that I'm in the way, I think. Do I have to be in the way, or am I not in the way?
I don't think you're in the way, Brendan. I can't see you.
Oh, on my screen, I can see myself. But if everybody else cannot see me, that's so much the better. And so there's the world's major biomes. So we're just going to ask a few questions about those. One thing I would ask you to look at is their distribution relative to the key lines of latitude. So check out the biomes which are along the equator, along the tropics, the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn, and then also look at the Antarctic and Arctic circles and the distribution in that sense, just to remind yourselves of those things. And the colour scheme is fairly bright and breezy, and hopefully that will also indicate what the key biomes are. So if we move on to look at the first question, quite a straightforward session, this one. If I said to you savanna grasslands are found all over the world, would that be true or would it be false? So jot down your answers in the chat if you can. Just T or F would do. Okay, let's look at the answer. This is a false statement. Savanna grasslands are not found all over the world. Savanna grasslands are mainly found within the tropics. Okay, let's have a look at the second true or false. The statement is tropical rainforests are found mainly along the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. Would that be true or false? Jot your ideas in the chat. Okay, let's have a look at the answer to that one. That is also false. It's the tropical rainforests tend to be found near to the equator, between 10 degrees north and 10 degrees south. Let's have a look at the third question. The statement here to analyse is the largest terrestrial biome is the taiga, which is also known as boreal forests. So is that a true or false statement? Jot down your thoughts. And the correct answer is true. That is the largest terrestrial biome. Okay, let's have a look at the next question. The main cause of biodiversity decline and extinctions in the last 200 years has been disease and invasive species. Is it true that that is the case? are the main causes of decline and extinctions, disease and invasive species. Put your answer for T or F, true or false, and we will look at those. One or two good answers there. Right, okay. The answer is false. It's false because the main cause of biodiversity decline and extinctions has been habitat loss and the degradation and change of exploitation of hunting and fishing, those sorts of things. And the final question in the true or false round, the statement is there is more biodiversity decline inside the tropics than outside the tropics. Is that true or false? Just type T or F or jot down T or F. And the correct answer to that is true. It is correct to say that there is more biodiversity decline inside the tropics than outside. Okay, we're on to our next activity now, which Fiona is going to take us through.
Okay, guys, so this is the bubble quiz. And if you've seen these before, you know that the answers can be any of them, all of them, or none of them. So one of the answers might be correct, none of them might be correct, or it could be 2, 3, or 4. So pop the answers down in the chat for me. So A, B, C, or D. So which of the following would be correctly classified as marine ecosystems? Coral reefs, haloseas, hydrothermal vents, or rocky shores? What do you think? Pop your answers in the chat. Okay, and let's reveal the answer. All 4 of those are marine ecosystems. So well done if you've got that correct. So for question 2, which of the following would be classified as a physical factor damaging marine ecosystems? So tropical storms, sea surface temperature anomalies, marine plastic, or disease? What do you think? Pop your answer in the chat. Yeah, good answer there. Let's reveal the answers for everyone else. A, B, and D. So C, marine plastic is not a physical factor. Well done on those. And for question 3, which of the following would be classified as a human factor? So we're doing the opposite now. Damaging marine ecosystem. Wastewater, marine plastic, agricultural fertilizers, or desalination plants? What do you think? A, B, C, D? Okay, let's reveal the answers. All of them, well done. For question number 4, which abiotic factor or factors can best explain the global distribution of arid environments such as deserts? Is it fortitude, latitude, continentality, or longitude? What do you think? A, B, C, or D? Let's have some answers in the chat. Okay, let's reveal the answer. Well done. B and C. Well done to those of you who got that correct. And for question 5, which biome is the largest on Earth by area and volume? So is it A, savanna grassland, B, marine ecosystems, C, tropical rainforest, or D, tundra? So by area and volume, what do you think? So we're just looking at one answer for this one. Which biome? Okay, yeah, we've got the correct answers in the chat there. Well done. It is B. Well done, marine ecosystems. Okay, we'll now pass you back over to Brendan for these slides.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Okay, we're now going to have a look at the impact of deforestation on the mineral nutrient cycle. So before we do the activity, we're just going to look at a diagram or two here. So this first diagram shows the nutrient cycle in an ecosystem, in this case, a rainforest, before deforestation, when the rainforest is intact in its natural state, if you like. So with these diagrams, they take slightly different forms, but with this one, we've color-coded the biomass in green, the litter which would be things like leaves that fall, as you're seeing around Britain at the moment as we speak. We've got lots of leaf litter everywhere. That's in grey. And the soil is in a brown colour. And the nutrient flows are shown by arrows which vary in width. So they're flow lines, effectively, proportionate to the relative size of the flows of nutrients between the different areas. So just take a moment to look at this. This diagram, by the way, is known as a Gersmehl diagram after Philip Gersmehl, a professor of geography at the University of Minnesota. And he sort of came up with this idea, which has proved very, very useful way back in 1976. And they're very useful, obviously, for geographers, but I know that biologists use these as well. So if any of you are doing biology for one of your A-levels, you may come across these in that study too. So what we want to see is what happens after deforestation. So if we move the diagram forward, and you can see the size of the arrows has changed quite markedly. And what we see is that, in particular, there's been a massive reduction, as might be expected, in the nutrients which are stored in the biomass, because the biomass has been largely removed. And consequently, the cycle of nutrients within the ecosystem has been very, very much depleted. What we also see is that there's been a massive loss of nutrients from runoff. You can see the arrow going from the litter there, and that will be occurring because the rain falls and then the nutrients dissolve into the rainfall and run off and then end up in streams and rivers and disappear from that location. What we also see is something called leaching. If you look at the large arrow going downwards from the soils, this is when rain falls and it dissolves the nutrients, and that gets taken away deep down into the bedrock, and it cannot be accessed anymore by the plant roots. So when this happens, it's a pretty serious problem in the rainforest ecosystem. And when people have moved into these areas and cleared them, they often sort of report that when they try to grow crops, for the first few years everything's fine, and then the nutrients have just gone because they've been washed away, and the soil becomes much, much less fertile, and they're starting to use artificial fertilizers and so on and so forth. So the whole thing is very, very unsustainable. And people were quite surprised at just how precarious and how fragile rainforest ecosystems are. So having looked at that and revised that a little bit, now let's look at the task, which is called stepping stones. So the idea is that you complete what we're calling a chain of analysis to explain the impact of deforestation on the mineral nutrient cycle in the tropical rainforest biome. You could do this, by the way, for any biome that you study. The same sort of thing would apply. We're applying it here in the connection of rainforest. So if we look at the task you have to do, you've got these stepping stones, and we've got the first and last stepping stones have been completed. And what it would be good for you to do, just jot down to numbers 2, 3, and 4, is to write down what stages would happen between that. So the first stage is fallout as the litter decomposes. Very little of the flora, the plants, are left. The last stage is uptake by plants is much reduced. So see if you can jot down what's going on in between times. So I'll give you a moment to do that. So you can jot in the chat if you've got any brief thoughts. You could just put 2 and with a couple of words, 3 with a couple of words, and 4 with a couple of words. So give you a few moments more on that. And the idea is that you are really thinking about what's going on in the nutrient cycle. Remember referring to the Gersmehl diagrams. Okay, so we're going to take you through some good ideas. There may be different ways of ordering these or different words you might use, but Step 2 would be something along the lines of decay and mineralization is much reduced. So that would be because there is very little of the litter, okay, because that's gone. Then the input from weathered rock, that's reduced. The bioweathering is reduced because there are fewer roots around growing through into the rocks, into the bedrocks, to break them up and then provide a source of nutrients for the soil. And the missing step is the loss of runoff and loss through leaching is much increased, as the two arrows showed on the Gersmill diagram. So a good thing for you to do is to revise Gersmill diagrams and really think through the process to sort of tell the story of what's going on when a biome or an ecosystem is disturbed in that way. Okay, we're moving on now to the connection wall with Fiona.
Okay, so some of you watching may have done the connection wall before. So we're going to have 16 key phrases or words that all can be grouped together into 4 different groups of 4. So you're looking for the connections. So I'm just going to do a quick overview of it at the moment. So for this one, we're looking at coral reefs. And at Tutor to You, our coral reef case study is Australia's Great Barrier Reef, but some of you may have studied somewhere else. Remember, you're going to need to write in a lot of detail about this. So perhaps some of the detail might be different to what you might be using in your classrooms. But let's see if we can uncover the first group. So in the chat, can you suggest to me what the group title would be for the first one? We'll just see if anyone can come up with it first, or we might ease you in and give you the first group, and then you find the grid references. So can anyone suggest the first title? So groups, group titles that it could be. Okay, good. Yes. So the first group that we're looking for is groups or types of coral reefs. So for these 4 answers here, we could have had 2B, 4B, 4C, and 4D. Okay, so that's how this activity might work if you struggle with that first one. So think about what the next group might be, or groupings. We're going to give you some time now before we go through them. Okay, so think about what else is you could associate with coral reefs, and you can pop the grid references into the chat for me. Okay, if you don't know, just have a guess. You might be very close to, we might have this exact same wording, but you might be very close. So we can just give you some time now to see if you can group the other boxes into another 3 groups now, because we've got the first one. So something related to coral reefs. So just give you a few minutes. So you can put title suggestions for your groups into the chat with or without the groupings. So maybe you want to suggest the titles and then do the groupings, or you want to do them all together. Got some good suggestions coming in. Well done for those of you that are contributing. Which ones look like they belong together? So if you're listening back, you can always pause this if you think you need more time to group these together. But let's start to go through for the next group then. So the next group is natural factors in health and survival of reefs. So we've got these 4 grouped together for that one. So well done to those of you that got that one correct. So 3A, 3C, 2D, and 1D. So maybe the last 2 might become a bit clearer to you. Now we've got 2 of the groups out of the way. So just give you a further minute. Good answers coming in the chat there. Well done. Excellent contributions. Thank you. So let's reveal the last 2 groups. So we have human factors in health and survival reefs. So we had physical factors. Now we have human factors, which then leaves this last group together as future prospects for coral reef. So what will happen to them perhaps in the future? So whether that could be positive or negative. So just what's happening to them in the future. So well done to those of you that were contributing with that. Remember for next time, try to use the grid references. Thank you. Okay, over to Brendan for Beat the Teacher now.
I think Brendan might still be muted.
I'm still here. Thanks very much, Fiona. Thanks, John. Okay, we're now on to an activity called Beat the Teacher, where you will see a couple of paragraphs where there have been some deliberate mistakes included. So it might be difficult to spot them. So if we take a look at these two paragraphs, they're about an ecosystem. I'll just read through for you. And as I read it, you might actually almost hear errors. An ecosystem develops into a plagioclimax community when it becomes mature, with established vegetation suited to the prevailing climatic conditions. It has achieved a state of instability with no further successions unless conditions change. As different species of fauna become dominant, they support particular communities of flora. As the plants go through succession, so does the entire ecosystem. So that's the first paragraph. You may have spotted some errors already. And I'll read you the second paragraph. A climatic climax community occurs if humans have prevented the ecosystem from developing its climatic climax. They may do this intentionally or unintentionally using disturbances or arresting factors such as cutting down or burning natural vegetation, planting trees or crops, grazing animals, abstracting water, draining land or irrigating land. Now, before we move on, there are 5 errors, and I will give you a hint. There are 4 errors in the first paragraph and 1 error in the second paragraph. So most of the errors are in the first paragraph. So take a look at that and see if you can spot any. All you need to do in the chat is just type the word. Or if you're doing this with paper, just jot down keywords you think are wrong. Okay, so what is it that is erroneous in these paragraphs? Let's take a look. So in the first paragraph, you've got the word plagioclimax is wrong. The word instability is wrong. The word fauna is wrong. And flora is wrong. They're the 4 errors in the first paragraph. And in the second paragraph, the word climatic climax appears twice, and that's incorrect in the first instance. So that might help you to consider what the corrections would be. How would we fix these errors? How would we make the corrections to these? Have a little think about what you need to do to fix those. And once again, if you get a chance to jot these down or pop them in the chat to see what should be different. And good spot there. The good spot from someone there showing that the second paragraph, certainly climatic climax appears twice. So that's clearly incorrect in that sense. And there may have been, yes, someone has said words are the wrong way round. Yep. Now it's a good point that, because when you're looking at these key terms, it's very easy to muddle them up. This is a kind of common misconception that happens. So this sort of exercise is a good way to consider what's the correct meaning of these terms. So let's have a look and see what the corrected paragraphs would look like. The corrected paragraphs would look like this. So that first one, plagioclimax, is replaced by the climatic climax community when it becomes mature. That's kind of a natural state. And it's achieved not instability but equilibrium with no further succession. So it's kind of in a stable state. And the words, as somebody said, the flora and fauna are the wrong way round in the erroneous paragraph. So here we've got it corrected. As different species of flora become dominant, they support particular communities of fauna. So the plant life supports the animal life, that way round. In the second paragraph, where we saw climatic climax appear twice, that should have been, the first one should have been plagioclimax community, which is when there are arresting factors that kind of inhibit the progress of the ecosystem towards the climatic climax community. And we have lots of pleasure climax communities that we can see within the UK, things like the chalk downlands, and quite often if you go to national parks, they're not actually in their natural state because they've been grazed or farmed for many hundreds, if not thousands of years. So they're not actually climatic climax communities. Okay, so hopefully you found that useful. And we're now going to move on to On Balance with Fiona.
Okay, so this activity is really useful in helping us build up to some evaluation. And you're going to need your evaluation in your 9 markers and your 20 markers. You're going to need that throughout. So it's just a way of looking at balancing our answers. So we're going to start with trying to think of some advantages, so 2 advantages of Savannah conservation. So if you have any ideas on the benefits of conservation in the Savannah, pop them in the chat now. You can shorten them. We don't need to write in really long paragraphs. Okay, we're just looking for some overall benefits and that we can then talk through and explain in a little bit more depth in our answers. So yeah, pop your answers in the chat now for me, please. Just give you a few minutes to do that. So remember, if you're watching this back, not live, you can always pause it to take some more time here to think about your advantages. But we've got some good answers coming in. Obviously, we might have some different advantages to you guys. So let's have a look at which advantages that we've got. So if you haven't got any, you can steal these and write these down. So you can make some notes, pause the video if you are watching back, or jot a few things down now if you're watching live with us. So we've got tourist income boosting the local economy. So via the economic multiplier effect, people in the area, businesses, accommodation, restaurants, they have a boost to the local economy by the tourist income. We've also got greater awareness and sustainable farming solutions to conflicts. So that's one of the benefits that we could have suggested for Savannah conservation. Another one is biodiversity is protected by tourism. So the tourism income can go towards conservation efforts within the national parks. To be a national park, they also have conservation frameworks, so a list of things that need to be done to be considered a national park and to make sure that conservation is done effectively there. And also because they have the reliance of tourists coming to see this unique biodiversity, they're going to ensure that it's protected more. So, of course, when we're looking at evaluation in an answer, especially in a 9 and 20 marker, and especially so in a 20 marker, we need to make sure that we are not having a one-sided argument, because our level 3 in a 9 marker and a level 4 answer in a 20 marker, we need to make sure that we have an answer that shows that we understand the other side of the argument. We need to have balance within our answer. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is to suggest some disadvantages of conservation. So if we look on the next slide, see if we can balance out some disadvantages of Savannah conservation to see if we can see the other side of the argument. So I can see some people starting to type away here and pop their answers in the chat. So if you've got any of the opposite side of the coin, so this can be different disadvantages, or the more developed answers, we'll look at the other side of the coin for our current advantages. So we'll think about, well, what's the problem with these specific examples we've just used? Okay, what's the negatives of tourism in the local economy, perhaps? So just give you a few minutes there to pop down your disadvantages. So you might have a few different ones that we might have. If you're working off of R1s, try to think of the opposite argument for them. Okay, so let's reveal which disadvantages that we've gone for here. So you can see we're starting to even out our answer. So the other side of tourism income is that tourism, we now know, is a very fickle friend. So, for example, during the COVID lockdowns, tourism fell significantly in most countries. Whilst there was still domestic tourism in LICs and newly emerging economies, domestic tourism isn't very available or isn't very affordable. So, therefore, what we had was a lack of tourism income to areas that really, really relied on it. So, in that case, we can understand that tourism income is not a guaranteed way of improving the local economy. It's not a guaranteed way of savanna conservation, because we've got these problems that might arise with its temporary nature, or perhaps somewhere the political nature of the country might change and the tourists aren't allowed in the area anymore. There's all different kinds of things why tourism might change for an area. You've also got the issue of paper parks. We've also got growing populations increases pressure to grow crops. So, in conjunction with your contemporary urban environments, we know that we've got a significant proportion of population growth across the world, especially on the outskirts of urban areas. And that pressure is growing in countries to make sure that people can be fed. So, we've got pressure to grow crops. We've got conflicts with farmers. And for example, we've got elephant damage. So this is the other side of the coin. So well done to those of you that have contributed both advantages and disadvantages, especially those of you that were able to make the links and look at both sides of the coin for tourism. So well done there. And as you can see, sorry, we've got
nearly had a case study there.
we have a case study anyway. As you can see, we have got some balance with the answer, but is it really a balance, or is there one side of this that is more significant than the other? So we're talking about our advantages and disadvantages, but are our disadvantages weaker than our advantages? And what you need to make sure that you're doing in a 9 and a 20 marker is in your conclusion, you're not sitting on that fence. You're making a decision. Which one is it? Which one are you more in favor for? Is it the advantages or disadvantages? And you're making sure that you come to a conclusion, a decision on how you're going to evaluate. And now we're ready for our case study alert.
We are ready. Thanks, Fiona, for those very good advice there on evaluation and the importance of considering, how you write a conclusion. And we're now going to move on to look at a case study. There will be an activity following on in a few minutes' time, but this is one case study you may have done, or it's similar to one you may have done, which is the Sunderbans in Bangladesh and in part of India as well, mainly in Bangladesh. And this is because in the A-level spec, you need to know a case study. You just need to have learned a case study about a specified region that's experiencing ecological change, so that you can illustrate and analyse the nature of the change, the reasons for it, and how the economic, social and political character of its community reflects the ecological setting and how the community is responding to change. So you need to know probably a framework where you're going to have some key characteristics, knowing what the threats are, human and physical, and what the impacts are likely to be, or what they already are, and then how they're responding. What are the key ways they might be managing that? So if I just talk you through a few of those, the key characteristics of this area would be that the Sunderbans covers a very large area, 10,000 square kilometres. It's a very low-lying area in the Ganges Delta. Lots of the ecosystems there are mangrove forests, which are salt-tolerant hallocoeres, and they provide really important habitats for rare species, including the Gangetic dolphin and the Royal Bengal tiger. And lots of the people live on islands, quite ephemeral islands sometimes, that can be there 1 year and gone the next, called chars, and there's a dense network of river channels among the area. So the threats are the key human threat would be population pressures in both Bangladesh and India including demand for agricultural land to grow food. It's a great place to grow food, but there's an awful lot of people wanting that food. There's also leading to pressures of unsustainable fishing, because there's a lot of fishing that goes on in the area, and unsustainable wood collection for fuel. And that includes mangrove destruction, which is an issue. Upstream issues are problematic as well, such as away from the area, you've got deforestation in the Himalaya, and there are dams up there as well. And that can create problems in terms of soil salinity and the amount of fertile soil. Consequently, there's a serious depletion of what we call ecosystem services. They're the things the ecosystem can do for us, such as protecting people from storm surges, provisioning food, regulating climate, and providing education and cultural services. And a physical threat is that the area encounters isostatic subsidence, along with other quasi-physical threats, including a strongly anthropogenic climate change, which causes rising sea levels, coastal erosion, and exacerbation of tropical storms, such as the famous cyclone Sida back in 2007. So if we now briefly look at the impacts, there's been a decline in mangrove species, with subsequent damage to food webs and a major decline in biodiversity, including ecosystem loss. For fish nurseries, a lot of fish will spawn in that area. Local communities who are quite accustomed to living in such areas are finding that their livelihoods are in jeopardy due to positive feedback loops, you've probably heard of those before, which upset the equilibrium of the ecosystems that they depend on. Another issue would be that approximately 60% of the male workforce in the area are leaving the region to seek higher paid jobs elsewhere, including in other countries, particularly in the Middle East. That's something which you'll be aware of with the World Cup about to take place in Qatar. Lots of workers have gone from this area to work there. Responses would be that they would probably have lots of conservation designations to offer protection for the area. Sometimes they're there on paper, but they don't always work in practice, hence the point that Fiona made earlier about paper parks. And for example, you have the Worldwide Fund for Nature as an eco-region. They've designated it as an eco-region, which is irrespective of political borders. But sometimes those things don't always work that well in practice. There are schemes intended to relieve population pressure in the area by encouraging migration to other parts of Bangladesh. And there are efforts being made to improve awareness of the value of ecosystem services and livelihood assets provided. So that's an education role for the community. So we're now going to do an activity led by Fiona, which is called Categorize, to help revise that. So Fiona, over to you.
Okay, so yes, on the topic of impacts, let's see how well you were listening to Brendan there when he was going through the impacts in that area, because that's what we're looking at now. We're going to categorize them into economic, social and political, or environmental. Even if this is not your case study, you may be given a figure in the exam paper that might be text, and you need to pick out and categorize and sort the impacts in order to answer your question. So this is a good activity, even if you're not familiar with the case study. So when the timer starts, you're going to have 60 seconds. Just pop the numbers down for now, either on your paper that you're using at home or in the chat box. Let's just go with the numbers to make it nice and quick. So you've got 60 seconds starting now. Okay, well done. Some good answers coming in. Keep them coming. You've got about 30 seconds left, so halfway through, keep those answers coming. Well done. Okay, last few seconds for those last couple of numbers you haven't got down yet. And let's reveal the answers. Well done, everyone. So Under economic impacts, you should have 3, 8, and 4, which is loss of agricultural land. 60% of the male population leave the region. Obviously, in most countries, it's the males within the family that are the main breadwinner. They're earning most of the money. So when they leave the region, the local economy and the national economy will also suffer. And we've got ecotourism helping to employ local people. So we've got positives there and negatives. So when we talk about impacts, we could be positive or negative impacts. With social and political impacts, we've got livelihood assets lost and population encouraged to leave vulnerable coastal land. So people being displaced might be an issue here. And for environmental impacts, you should have 5, 1, and 7. I can see some good answers there. Well done. You've got biodiversity loss. Mangrove loss reduces storm surge resilience. So those of you that understand that mangroves are a natural way of protecting against storm surges and also against coastal erosion as well. And then we've also got subsidence of land, so isostatic change. So well done to those of you that got the correct answers there. And we're just going back over to Brendan now to look at some figures.
Okay, thank you, Fiona. And we're just going to round off our session this evening with some questions, multiple choice questions. And the questions will involve you being able to understand some diagrams. First of all, we're going to look at some Whittaker biome diagrams. Then we're going to look at some climate graphs. And finally, a couple of images just to finish off. So there'll be 4 Whittaker diagram questions, 4 on climate graphs, and 2 images. So the first question is a Whittaker biome diagram, and the question is, which biome is indicated by the arrow? So take a look at that diagram. Make sure you look at the axes. So we have precipitation shown on the vertical axis, temperature on the horizontal axis. Notice while the temperature ranges between, quite a long way below zero, right up to around 30 degrees Celsius. Okay, so make your guesses. Yep, 1 or 2 good, correct guesses here. Let's have a look and see. That is indeed tropical rainforest, which the diagram tells us is a place which is very warm and very wet. Okay, question 2. In this case, we've add the arrow to a different part of the Whittaker biome diagram. So which biome is indicated by the arrow? You have 4 choices, A, B, C, and D. Is it tundra, tropical rainforest, savanna grassland, or subtropical desert? And good answer there. Yep. Okay, right, let's look at the correct answer for that one is tundra, which, but in contrast to the first answer, this is a place that's very dry and very cold. Okay, the third arrow is pointing to a different part of the Whittaker diagram. In this case, you can see it down there on the bottom right-hand side of the Whittaker diagram. Which biome is indicated by the arrow in this case for number 3? Yes, good call there. Yeah, let's have a look at the answer. That is going to be subtropical desert. So in this case, it's very hot and very dry. And the 4th question on the Whittaker diagram, the arrow this time is pointing to a different part of the graph, slightly more difficult to assess in some respects, because it's not quite so extreme. So you can do this by a process of elimination, and I think somebody has sensibly done that. Well done. The correct answer is savanna grassland, which is pretty warm, and there is precipitation, seasonal precipitation in an area like that. So it's nowhere near as wet as a rainforest, but not as dry as a hot desert. Okay, let's take a look at question 5. In this case, we have a sequence of climate graphs. So the first one, the question is, take a look at this climate graph. In this case, the axes, as you're probably familiar with, one vertical axis is showing temperature. That's the mean temperature for each month. The other axis on the right-hand side is showing the mean precipitation for each month. You also need to remember that with these, it's very easy to make the mistake of looking at the wrong part of the graph. So in this case, the line is showing the temperature and the bars are showing the precipitation for each month. So, which atmospheric conditions are essential for the development and maintenance of the tropical forest biome? Is it A, hot and dry all year round, B, significant seasonal variation, C, a marked wet and dry season, or D, hot and wet all year round? And somebody's already got ahead of us there and correctly guessed, or knew that it was hot and wet all year round. Well done. Okay, number 6. So in this location here for this climate graph, what causes the lower rainfall in July and September in Manaus in Brazil? So you can see how the rainfall goes down there quite a bit during those months. Okay, is it A, B, C, or D? All of those questions mention the ITCZ. You should know the ITCZ is the Intertropical Convergence Zone. So which of those statements about it is correct? Okay, let's take a look at the right answer. The right answer is that the ITCZ moves to be over the Tropic of Cancer at that time of year, which is when we in the Northern Hemisphere would have our summer, and that becomes drier in the Southern Hemisphere over the Tropic of Capricorn. Okay, number 7. Which atmospheric conditions are essential for the development and maintenance of the savanna grassland biome? So we've changed the chart this time. The graph is now for Kano in Nigeria. Take a look at that graph. Then take a look at the options. So which atmospheric conditions are essential for the development and maintenance of savanna grassland biome? Is it A, hot and dry all year round, B, insignificant seasonal variation, C, hot and wet all year round, and D, a marked wet and dry season? Go for it. If you're not quite sure, have a guess, but hopefully you do know that the answer is D, a marked wet and dry season. You can see that the dry season there is in the months between roughly November through to March, April, and then the wet season starts. Okay, number 8. Same place. What causes the lack of rainfall, dry season, from November to March, April in Kano? So what causes that dry season, essentially? And once again, like the earlier question, we see the ITCZ appearing, Intertropical Convergence Zone. So where does it need to be for the dry season to happen? Let's take a look at the correct answer. It needs to be over the Tropic of Capricorn in the Southern Hemisphere. And that's when we would have our winter. That would bring a drier season in places that would normally have this kind of climate. So they have a dry and wet season. Okay, number 9, an image for you. Which 2 adaptations of flora are most likely to be found in the tropical rainforest biome? Would it be A, pyrophytic with deep taproots, B, epiphytic, shallow roots, C, epiphytic, deep taproots, or D, pyrophytic and shallow roots? Some key terms for you to be familiar with there. If you're not sure about those, look them up afterwards. Okay, and the answer is epiphytic. So epiphytic are plants like you can see here of bromeliad. They actually live on the branches of the trees up in the canopy and will have quite shallow roots. The other plants will have quite shallow roots. Number 10, which 2 adaptations of flora are most likely to be found in savanna grasslands? Would it be A, epiphytic shallow roots, B, pyrophytic deep taproots, C, epiphytic deep taproots, or D, pyrophytic shallow roots? Again, look those words up if you're not sure of them, And yeah, someone's got the correct answer, which is pyrophytic, deep taproots. Pyrophytic is connected with fire, so they need to be resistant to fire, and sometimes they even need fire to survive. And they have deep taproots to reach the water sources, which are quite often deep underground. Well done, everybody. Just the final point to make this evening is that there is additional support available to you. You know you can download things. There's also a teacher's pack there, and we've mentioned that earlier on. So please do make yourselves available to those resources. So thank you very much. And next week, I think we have even more challenges with glacial system. Isn't that right, John?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Brennan. And a reminder as well that next week we're back to Tuesday evening, aren't we? Tuesday, 6:30. So brilliant. And again, yes, thank you to Brennan. Thank you to Fiona. Thank you to those of you who've taken part in the live chat. Well done to you if you've been watching this on replay and had a go at some of the activities. Quick reminder that the PowerPoint that Brendan and Fiona have been using tonight will be available in just a few moments' time to download directly from the Tutor2U website. Once again, thanks to everybody and a very good night. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you very much. All the best. Bye.
Bye.